So, last time we really dove into the inner world of a Kafkaesque artist. Today, we're going to look at something a little different, the actual environment they live in. The world that so often just doesn't get their vision. And we're going to do it through another story, this one called The Parable of the Infinite Architect. Here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to follow the architect's life, starting with his bizarre vision and the trouble he runs into with his patron. Then, we'll watch his slow slide into obscurity, uncover his final, really heartbreaking confession, and see how the world just moves on. Finally, we'll try to decode what his tragic struggle really means. Okay, so picture this. Our story starts in a kingdom that is completely obsessed with things. Think monumental towers, solid stone walls. Everything is about being big and tangible. But right in the middle of all this, there's one guy who chooses a radically different path. And right away, this sets up the huge conflict at the heart of the story. I mean, this isn't just about weird architecture. It's a philosophical statement. The architect is basically rejecting the entire physical world to create something he believes is purer, something built entirely from the intangible. So at first, his work is this big public show. People are totally captivated, but not really by the palace itself, because, they can't see it, but by the performance of it all. It's like a kind of street magic to them. And they have these big debates about the floor plan of a masterpiece that isn't even there. And right here, we see the first big crack in his relationship with the world. The public's fascination is the only thing that validates his work, but at the same time, he completely resents it. He sees their attention as just a distraction from the mathematical purity of his vision. So he needs an audience, but he can't stand that they just don't get it. And, that tension just gets worse when money gets involved. Because every artist, even one who builds with shadows, eventually needs a patron. And with patronage, that's when compromise comes knocking, as the architect finds out when he meets a wealthy duke with a very, very different agenda. See, the Duke doesn't see this as some timeless masterpiece. To him, it's a temporary curiosity, a carnival act. So he slaps a 40-day time limit on it, just long enough for a local festival. He basically believes that the public's imagination, their ability to care about something invisible, has an expiration date. And this is just that classic, timeless struggle, isn't it? The clash between artistic vision and commercial reality. The architect is chasing this impossible, eternal perfection. The Duke just wants to package that struggle into a neat, profitable 40-day event. It's the infinite versus the temporary. Wow. I mean, this line just cuts right to the heart of his alienation, right? The public praises his discipline, his endurance, but they're completely missing the point of the art itself. So to him, their applause doesn't feel like support. It feels like the walls of a prison closing in. But here's the thing. The Duke was kind of right about one thing. The world's patience for abstract ideas is pretty limited. And as the years went by, the novelty of an invisible palace wore off. And this began the architect's long, tragic fall into total obscurity. People are just done. They're done imagining rooms. They've got real lives to live, and what they really want is the tangible warmth of a fireplace or the security of an actual roof over their heads. The need for real, functional stuff starts to completely overshadow the allure of the invisible. I mean, talk about a fall from grace. It becomes literal and just humiliating. He's forced out of the town square and gets moved to this forgotten, damp corner of a public zoo. And now he paces out his shadow palace right next to the cages of the great apes. So his isolation is just total now. The visitors who are drawn to the raw physical power of the animals, they just walk right past him. The visionary artist has become just another exhibit, and his obsessive movements look no different from the pacing of the creatures trapped in their cages. But here's the crazy irony. It's only here, in complete and total obscurity, that his art finally achieves the substance he was always craving. With no one left to watch, the shadows finally feel as heavy and real as granite. But of course, only to him. Okay, so this brings us to the story's really haunting climax. One night, a young guard at the zoo sees the architect lying completely still, and he approaches him. And in that moment, he stumbles upon a final, terrible truth that basically redefines his entire life's work. And of course, as the guard gets closer, this is the natural question, right? The one everyone's probably wondered for years. After all this time, was the invisible palace finally done? Did he actually achieve his life's ambition? But the answer he gives, man, it's just devastating. He confesses that the palace was never meant to be a home. It was an escape. He didn't choose shadows because it was some higher form of art. He chose them because the real world, the world of stone, felt like a suffocating burden. And this confession, it just changes everything. His entire life's work wasn't a gift. It wasn't a pursuit of beauty. It was a defense mechanism. It was a symptom of his alienation from a world he just couldn't bear to touch. He couldn't find a stable foundation in reality, so he built his masterpiece on nothing at all. So, the architect is gone. And does the world stop? Does it even notice his silent, invisible creation? Nope. Instead, it rushes to fill the void he left behind with something loud, hot, and undeniably useful. Literally, the very next day, the Duke orders a massive iron forge to be built on the exact spot where the Shadow Palace once stood. The silence is immediately shattered by the roaring fire and the constant clang of hammers on anvils. And that's it, right? This is the final, decisive victory of the physical world. The palace required you to use your imagination. The forge requires nothing. It offers the comforting certainty of swords and plows, things you can actually see, hold, and use. And just like that, the architect isn't just forgotten, he's actively erased. The heat, the noise, the soot from the forge just scorch away any memory of the man who built with air. The world proves it has no patience for the abstract when the tangible is so much easier and so much more certain. So what does this all mean? What are we supposed to take away from this really tragic story? All right, let's pull back and try to decode this parable and its deep connection to that universal Kafkaesque struggle of the artist. When you get right down to it, the architect's life wasn't some grand, noble sacrifice for his art. His art was the sacrifice. It was a beautiful, complex, invisible cage he built for himself just to hide from a world he simply couldn't handle. And if you've read Kafka's A Hunger Artist, the parallels here are just uncanny. The Shadow Palace, that's the fast, an internal goal nobody else can see or verify. The Duke is the impresario, treating art like a spectacle. The zoo is the circus, a freak show. And the forge, that's the panther, this vibrant, real thing that replaces the artist. But the biggest one? The architect's unstable foundations perfectly echo the hunger artist's final confession. I couldn't find the food I liked. They created out of necessity because they were fundamentally misfits for the real world. And that, right there, is the heart of the tragedy. The architect might have achieved some kind of personal, internal perfection in his mind, but because it was completely disconnected from reality, it vanished the second he did. His life's work left no mark, no legacy. It changed nothing. So this leaves us with this final, really haunting question. Is there any nobility in creating a perfect internal world if it means total isolation? This whole parable is a profound warning about the price of an art that refuses to connect, that never touches the ground. Did the architect find a sanctuary in his palace, or did he just build himself a more elaborate prison and get lost in the dark?